Unit. Richard, thanks for joining us. I think it's important, first of all, to try to put this in context, this agreement. When you hear the adjective monumental being ascribed to it, how significant is it?
Well, I'd say it's a medium-sized monument. It's a logical thing to do. This is a relatively easy source of greenhouse gases to tackle. This agreement, the Montreal Protocol, was originally used for tackling ozone-depleting chemicals. That worked. The CFCs went. Now we've had HFCs. They don't damage the ozone layer, but they are powerful greenhouse gases. Not as important as carbon dioxide, and near as important in totality, but per molecule more important. And the thing is that as the world warms and societies get richer, it's likely that the use of air conditioning will increase across the world. So if you can have a deal now that sort of phases them out before that happens, it's undeniably a good thing.
Let's talk about the pace of this with different timeframes given to different countries depending on their wealth, their level of development. There's been criticism of the extra time given to China and India, very advanced countries in some respects, but of course with great tracts of very poor rural areas. I mean, do you think that's been a failing of this agreement?
No, I don't think so. This is pretty standard within the Montreal Protocol process. When in the CFC phase out, again, the developing countries were given quite a lot longer, which is entirely reasonable. They're poorer. It takes them longer to do this. It's written into a lot of UN agreements, including the Climate Convention, that developed countries have to lead. But what we've seen in the past, both under the Montreal Protocol and in some cases under the Climate Agreement, is that actually countries overachieve. And for example, in the UK now, it would be pretty hard to find a domestic fridge that had HFCs in them. We've already moved on. Most British sellers don't do this anymore. So it's really a question of now rolling that out into parts of the developing world. OK, so many parts of the industry already have responded, as you've just said. For those that haven't, will it become an imperative to do so? Will they want to hold it up as a badge of honour and say to their consumers, look, we've done this? I guess that's going to depend on which country you're in, how important that is. Yes, and I think consumer power has quite a lot to do with it. In the West, of course, we've got used now to buying appliances that have got energy-saving labels on them, and some customers will look out for these things. So basically, if companies, are developing a new line anyway, why wouldn't you look for something that is equally effective and doesn't have that label of having an HFC in it? In the developing world, there probably will be some manufacturers for whom it's more of a problem. But then again, a lot of the appliances that we buy in the West are actually manufactured there. So it's just a process of getting it all transferred. What could have been in this agreement that isn't? Not very much, I don't think. This agreement, in a sense, it's an achievement that we actually had a greenhouse gas tackled under the Montreal Protocol, because it was originally set up to tackle ozone depletion, a completely different problem. But because it worked, and because the same industry was involved, and there was a mechanism and so on, the decision was taken to try and use it for these greenhouse gases, and it has been successful. It would have been far more difficult, I think, to try to do this under the UN Climate Convention. But that's where the really big stuff lies, of course, because this is one industry, refrigerators, air conditioning, relatively easy to tackle. The big issue in climate change is still carbon dioxide, fossil fuels, the basis of our global economy, a much tougher nut to crack, or if you prefer, a bigger monument to having a deal. You described this at the beginning of our chat as a medium-sized monument. Is it going to have a medium impact on warming, on global warming? Yes, I mean, if you do the calculations, the projections for sort of the expansion of refrigeration and particularly air conditioning, and you look at what this would do, it's calculated to shave about ½ degree Celsius off the amount of global warming that we will see over the course of this century. Now, of course, no one has a crystal ball, but if you think ballpark 2.53 Celsius, it's shaving a bit off that. So it's worthwhile, but certainly not the whole of Nelson's column. OK, Richard Black from the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.